Okay everyone, so I thought at this point in the video I should actually talk and say something to give you guys an update of why I'm doing this, what I've done so far, where everything stands right now, and what I still need to do. So obviously I'm replacing the water pump on my C5 Corvette. Reason being was that after I replaced the serpentine belt and the belt tensioner, I noticed a small leak coming from the bottom of the water pump. Sometimes that can happen after you put a new belt on that doesn't have so much stretch in it, so it puts a little extra strain and stress, like upward force on the pulley of the water pump. This giant bell looking thing here. So that can sometimes break the seal and then cause the water pump to leak. So I had no idea when this thing was replaced last. Even though the car only has 55,000 miles on it, I thought I should just do this, and it's just another preventative maintenance thing to take care of right now. So up to this point, basically what I've done is I took all of the kind of things that were in the way off. That included the intake, that included the cover here, cross cover for the radiator, and then from there, basically what was required, took the belt off, obviously, tensioner, pulley, disconnected the battery, some electrical connectors, stuff like that. And then from there, the step was to drain the coolant. So basically, you don't really have to jack the car up. I probably could have done this with the car on the ground, but it was just a little easier. So I jacked the car up, and then on the bottom of the radiator, there's like a little kind of like plug that you actually use a 1/4 inch socket extension to kind of push in there, and then you obviously turn it counterclockwise, and then you kind of use a screwdriver and pop that out. Then there's a little kind of like drain nipple at the bottom of the radiator where all the coolant comes out, and that literally drained for probably a solid like 10-15 minutes. So after I drained all of that out and pretty much filled this entire bucket here with coolant looked good, so that was a good sign. Though coolant didn't look funny at all. It looked like just nice red kind of OEM coolant, so that was a good thing to see. So after I drained that, I turned the little stopcock and plugged that back up so the radiator wouldn't keep dripping. And so then from there, it was time to get all of the hoses off the water pump. So you have the main coolant hose at the top here, the main coolant hose at the going into the bottom radiator, and then the two coolant hoses, that one that goes to the reservoir here, and then the other that goes to the heater core system. Those are always a challenge to get off because after years of use and just kind of heats getting hot and cold, they kind of get stuck in place on the kind of outlets of the water pump. So that was a little challenging, especially with those stupid clips. I really wish automakers wouldn't use these clips. So I just basically used my vice grips, and then you set those and clamp those, and then yanked those things off. So I'll be replacing all of the clamps on the hoses with stainless steel hose clamps, so we don't have to deal with that again. So at that point, with all the hoses off, and every time you pull the hose off, more coolant would come out. And this is where I ran into the challenge of, it's kind of hard to see now, but there was coolant all over the floor here. So I tried my best to obviously contain this. I don't like getting coolant all over my garage, but it's just really difficult, especially when you got a hose here, and then basically the subframe, steering rack, pulleys, belts, underneath the car. There's no real good way, at least from what I saw, to drain the coolant, aside from when you're draining most of it out of the bottom of the radiator. So that was turned into a little bit of a messy job when I started pulling all the different hoses off. And then once all the hoses were off, it was time to actually pull the water pump off. So it's just 6 bolts. So 3 on the passenger, 3 on the driver's side, 3 on the passenger side. These 2 are for the tensioner pulley that I had already taken off. And then from there, basically, once all the bolts were loose, more coolant started to come out the front water jackets on the engine. So that was also awesome to have to try and mitigate the amount of coolant coming out and clean that up at the same time. So pulled all those 6 bolts off, and then basically the water pump kind of just, I didn't have to, I've seen some people, they have to kind of like pry it off the front of the engine. This luckily just kind of came right off after all the bolts were loose and off. So I already have all the parts that need to go back on. So I've got the new water pump, AC Delco of course, and then the 2 main coolant hoses I'll be replacing, the thermostat and thermostat housing I'll be replacing. But the one thing that I didn't really kind of account for that I definitely want to replace now that I see them are these water pump bolts. So A few of them are in okay condition. Some of them, they just look kind of junky and corroded and a little rusted. So some of these are actually seal with the water pump, so that's why they get exposed to some degree of fluid. So I just, you know, I don't want to take any chance of actually, you know, having something happen to these bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and order a set of ARP water pump bolts and thermostat housing bolts from Summit Racing. So it's going to delay my my projected time to finish this phase of the build here until I get the water pump bolts in. But in the meantime, I'm probably going to spend the time kind of trying to clean up all the area that I have access to with the water pump out of the way, because it's kind of crazy. This water, it's a very big water pump. It takes up a lot of space and in the kind of front area of the engine bay in front of the engine. So definitely going to try and clean up a lot of that as I can, get all the coolant kind of cleaned up that leaked out. And then of course, you know, as you guys might have heard when I lowered the car, so obviously there's coolant in the water pump. So when I pulled the water pump off, coolant started coming out of that. And then there's still plenty of coolant sitting in all the different channels and reservoirs in the engine itself. So the car was tilted back when I was actually taking all this off, so when I lowered the car down to finish up for the night, more coolant started pouring out of the inlet and outlet water jackets on the engine. So if anybody has a tip on how to replace a water pump on Name Your Car without getting coolant all over the place, I'd love to hear your recommendations, because I contained the coolant coming out of the radiator pretty well, but it was very hard to contain all the coolant pouring out of the hoses, the front of the engine, the water pump, because it's just all in there, and then it just hits everything and then drains from a million different places. So anyways, I'm going to pick up the video next once I basically have all of the things that I need, which is really just the set of water pump bolts from Summit Racing, and we'll continue on to finish up this phase of the project.
sir. Strong one. How many? What is it? 5.7 liters. That's more than we have in our Kia.
See if there's any coolant leaking.
Where'd you get that flashlight?
Harbor Freight.
I could use something like that in woodworking.
Those wet spots there were already from when I drained the coolant. Haven't noticed any new drop areas yet. Hopefully it stays that way. Alrighty everyone, so the water pump replacement on the C5 Corvette is now complete. Everything is spick and span, no leaks, everything is running as expected. So just a quick recap, so the water pump on this car was leaking. I suspected that when I put a new belt on the car, the non-stretched belt, because it was a new belt, it's tighter, so it put a little bit of upward pressure on the water pump pulley, possibly broke a seal or something like that. I don't know, I mean water pumps just go bad and they're fairly easy to replace on these LS engines, thankfully. So went on Rock Auto and ordered a brand new AC Delco OEM replacement water pump, a Gates thermostat and thermostat housing, and a bunch of, let's see, what else did we get? Oh, I got the outlet and inlet hoses for the coolant, and then I also replaced a lot of the kind of OEM style clamps with stainless steel hose clamps because they're a lot easier to get on and off than those split clamps. So the water pump job was fairly easy. It just, you know, you had to take the intake off, you had to take the belt off, the tensioner pulley, and the big thing was, it was an easy job, but it was definitely a messy job. And I don't know if I can't remember if I said this or not in the video while I was doing it, but there was really no good way to cleanly drain and get all the coolant out of the car. Yes, there is a spigot at the bottom of the radiator where you can very nicely open that up and drain that into a pan, but the biggest problem is when you take the actual water pump off the car, and for me, I had the car lifted up a little bit on the front, under the front subframe here to get a little better access to the radiator. Basically all the coolant that was in the water pump and in the engine block kind of sitting right there, all just started pouring out. And there's no, you know, nice spout where that kind of drains through. It just spills over everything and gets everywhere. So if anyone has a tip and trick on how to cleanly drain the coolant when you're replacing a water pump, let me know, because that was a big mess that I had to clean up. So slowly but surely, I'm checking off all the boxes here on the kind of maintenance items, things that I need to do to have a solid running and driving car. And that's really where I want this build to be, is that I want to obviously, you know, this build will really probably never be 100% done. I'll always be doing something to it, but I definitely want to get it to the point where it's a solid mechanically driving car, even if it's got some cosmetic things that I'm still working on. If it's solid mechanically and I can get it on the road, drive it and enjoy it, and then on the weekends or here and there I do little things that don't bring the car out of commission for extended periods of time, that's where I'm hoping to be in the near future with this car, so I can actually thoroughly enjoy it. Take it to work on a Friday, take it out on the weekends, pop the top, go down the coast highway, you know, things you do with a bright red Corvette. Okay, so I think that about does it for the C5 Corvette water pump replacement video here. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sticking to the end. I know I do like to talk a lot, but that's honestly the purpose of a lot of these videos, is so that I can explain, and I really do like, you know, helping people learn and teaching things via YouTube. So thank you for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate your viewership and support of the channel. And I also apologize, I have not been nearly as consistent and active as I wanted to be over the summer with YouTube and getting stuff done on the car, but some major life changes came my way. All good things, but just took a lot of time away from doing stuff in the garage here with free time and hobbies and stuff. So a lot more videos to come though, and I'm trying to get back on track with doing things to the car, doing, you know, I'm a whiteboard person, so I like writing on whiteboards, so I got all my tasks written out on whiteboards to do in the near future to really, like I said, get this car out on the road, because I want to drive it, I want to row through the gears, you know, take it to work on Friday, take it out, you know, stuff like that. So the next video is gonna be kind of cool. It's gonna be an actual modification, not just a repair anymore. So I'm really excited to do that. I've had this part sitting in a box for over a year now, and I'm really excited to put it on the car, because it's gonna really change the sound of the car and make it sound a lot better. So that'll be what I'm gonna be working on tomorrow on my day off. So hope you guys stick around and subscribe and tune into that video when it gets uploaded. So thanks so much again, guys, for watching and everything and your support of the channel. I really appreciate it. And other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one.